How will the latest decisions or no decisions in Congress affect the economy and your business? I'm Jamie Gorman, the host of Be Better at Business TV, and my guest this morning is the managing partner of Vantage Economics, John Stewart.
Good morning, Jamie.
Great. Well, John, as I always do when I have you on the show, you know, our audience is made up of small, medium business owners.
That's right.
Typically. And so I want to focus a little bit now on, you know, with the sequestration and the March 27th with the budget, what type of impact does that have specifically on our small, medium business audience?
Well, again, that'll vary from region to region, but I think that for the most part, many businesses should have a good idea of who their customer is. So
Okay.
if your customer is receiving federal contract dollars, it may not be that they get cut this year.
Right.
But certainly over the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to want to figure out much more about the position of your client if they do receive federal contract dollars.
Okay.
Now, it's also true that estimates, you know, there's a ripple effect in the economy, right?
Yeah.
So even though we're talking about direct cuts to government spending and government employees and whatnot, they spend money,
Right.
right? And if there's less money that they're spending, that means that there's less spending on things like coffee and food and
Okay.
movies and other services and products. And so about half of the economic activity, downturn in economic activity, is going to come from the private sector.
Okay.
Folks that had no idea they had any connection to the federal government.
Right. So it sounds like the first thing is, if you're in a, you know, on the surface it looks like this could be a business to business or business to government
Right.
type of an issue in those industries.
Right.
But because of the impact there, it ripples down. So even if you're a business to consumer and a lot of your consumers are in that federal sector, it could affect, and you may have to diversify or figure out how you're going to make up income from those specific customers.
That's right. So a strategic plan for small to medium-sized businesses would be, don't look at just who your direct customer is.
Right.
Look at a second or third derivative of that.
Okay.
Because if your customer is dependent on the federal government and the federal government stops spending with them, guess
Right.
what?
Okay.
You're next in line.
Okay.
So you really want to have a good gauge of that. If you're going to be impacted, start to diversify as soon as you possibly can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Once again, Be Better Business TV is live, and let's see if we have some questions from our audience. Alyssa?
Isn't the government still projected to spend more in 2013 than 2012?
Okay, so even with cuts, how is that, you know, that we get reports that the government is still going to spend more well, first of all, is that true?
Mhm.
And the second part is, how can that be when there's also cuts?
Yeah, so again, that kind of goes back to the question that we got in terms of, will this cause a recession?
Right.
So the number itself, 85 billion relative to our total economy of 14, 15 trillion,
Okay.
is still a very small number.
Right.
So even if we suffered that full cut nationally, not regionally, but nationally, we're not talking about a significant enough change there. So yeah, you can still have growth. That includes financing our debt.
Right.
So interest payments and whatnot, those are increasing.
Yeah.
Right. So the cost of running the government actually will increase in the next year.
Okay.
But it's not as though you know, government programs are necessarily going to be expanding across the board. They're going to be seeing significant cuts.
Okay.
So some of those are, you know, cost of living adjustments,
Right.
interest rates that we're paying on the debt, things like that. And there will be some small programs that will grow after March the 27th once they pass a new budget.
Right.
You know, you'll see some defense spending that's still going to increase. It's increasing at a decreasing rate. We gotta love those
I love
economic
that. I love when you use that
right,
term.
right. Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, that's right.
Right.
So that means basically, yeah, you can see some increases.
Okay. And so it sounds like, you know, we were expecting it to kind of increase like this, but it's only going to increase like
That's
this.
exactly right. Yeah.
So the cuts are more cutting from what the expected growth was, not
Right.
necessarily that the overall budget is going to be that much less.
Right, right. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Right,
Great.
right.
Good. So let me ask this: is this a, you know, Is this going to affect regions, specifically regions, more than the overall national economy?
Absolutely. So nationally, you might be talking about 0.2, 0.3% detraction from GDP, but it's clearly going to affect Northern Virginia and Norfolk the hardest. So when we look at total federal contracting dollars for fiscal year 2011, Virginia got about 11% of the total federal contracting dollars in the United States. Way disproportional to its population and all that. So, when you look at Virginia, Texas, and California, we make up, not quite half of the total federal contracting dollars. When you look at Northern Virginia, we would expect, I've seen some numbers out there that we might lose, or pardon me, the Commonwealth, all of Virginia, might lose about 200,000 jobs. That would actually send Virginia into a recession. Northern Virginia would receive the bulk of those job losses. And again, when we look at that number of 200,000, only about half of those would be directly related to the government. 100,000 jobs are going to come from mom and pop shops that had no idea that they had any connection to the federal government. So those are important things to consider when we're sort of just slashing budgets and not really exclusively focusing on the fat that they should be doing.
Well, and that's important also because the people who know they're connected, they're thinking about what am I going to do and how am I going to plan.
That's right.
The people that aren't seeing that they don't realize the connection there.
That's right.
That's going to be more of a lagging thing. Their business is just going to go down. They're going to get themselves in a little bit more trouble, and then they're going to be making more reactionary type decisions rather than being able to plan and go out and capitalize or sell or do what they need to do.
So for businesses in Northern Virginia today, you need to start looking at diversifying your business base, whether it's B2C or B2B, it doesn't matter. You need to start looking at diversifying that base. You need to start reducing your risk, which means that you have to double check your capital expenditures, try and renegotiate your financing with your bank to bring those interest rates down. Take advantage of that today. Don't wait another year, because if the economy does grow, your carry costs are going to be much higher. So do what you can
and also,
today.
I mean, if you wait till business goes down, it's going to be even tougher to get money.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So, instead of 2% employment growth generally in 2013 for the region, we're looking at 2% loss of jobs over that same time period. And that's going to impact everybody. Everybody's going to feel that, especially small businesses.
Well, I know the last time you were here, one of the things you said was a big impact to the businesses was the uncertainty. And at that time, we were talking a little bit more about the fiscal cliff, and they kind of put off the sequestration. And you talked about that one of the biggest impacts was that business owners, banks, they really didn't know what was down the path, so they were just kind of holding on to their cash, not making big decisions because they didn't know the long-term impact. Do you feel that's been relieved a little bit, or do you think that's still a major issue with the economy?
It's still a major issue. It would have been totally different had they come out and negotiated, and like I said before, kept the number the same. Keep it $85 billion. But allow the agencies to determine where they want to cut from. There would have been a lot more confidence in the business community knowing that the true fat was being focused on, as opposed to just across the board slashing, which would include good paying jobs. And now that they didn't come to any sort of resolution, there's this sense that they're still going to be negotiating over the next month. And so there's that uncertainty as to, well, hey, what are we going to have at the end of March? There's still this deadline of March the 27th that you haven't dealt with. There's less and less confidence now that Congress is able to actually deal with these major problems. And so that is one of the biggest headwinds to business activity. They're sitting on record levels of cash. They've got profit. That's one of the big issues, is we just don't know where things are going. If we make an investment decision and 6 months down the road Congress makes a decision that significantly taxes that or de-incents people to make that type of investment, we've suddenly found ourselves in a lot of trouble, and large public companies that are beholden to shareholders, that's a problem. They have to be very risk averse as opposed to accepting more risk.
Yeah. So it sounds like the best thing that Congress could do would be to really get on a budget, and let's have an operating budget as soon as possible.
That's absolutely right.
And it's, because as soon as that's done, then we know certain decisions are made, and it
Right.
removes a lot of the uncertainty, which removes some of the risk.
It does, and both parties need to understand they're going to have to give.
Right.
The Democrats can't have the full-blown entitlement programs that they're typically trying to defend.
Right.
The Republicans have to understand they're going to have to give on some of the revenue issues,
Yes.
which they did. They did back in
For the
when we were looking
cliff,
at the fiscal
right?
cliff, right? So, but there has to be even more.
Yeah.
They've really got to get their act together. Unfortunately, it's going to come to the entrepreneur.
Yeah.
It's going to be the drive of it's going to be the growth of the economy that's going to take us to the next step. And as we've seen historically, that typically comes from small to medium-sized businesses.
Right.
We're going to be the ones that are going to be at the forefront of this, taking the brunt, unfortunately. But maybe it's good if we take the leadership as opposed to depending on our elected officials. That might not necessarily be such a bad thing.
Yeah, I was in a discussion with a business owner this morning, and he was basically saying kind of that same thing. I know that I have to sell product, I have to get it on the trucks, I have to get it going, so it's still a daily business. I think some of the long-term thing, if they know what's going on, and I'm fully confident that our entrepreneurship type mentality here in the U.S. will kind of cover the gap once people know how to do it. They'll find a way to make that work for them.
They will, and I think that that's the positive thing. I think that one of the initiatives, especially when we start looking at Northern Virginia, we have precedents with things like BRAC. There need to be more public-private partnerships formed so that we can start looking at how does Northern Virginia deal with this. And again, it's not just 2013. That's almost a red herring in this whole larger debt issue. Once the economy starts getting a little bit better, there's going to be significant political pressure, i.e. 2014. Going back to your question from before, it's not a hard question, it's more a political issue. Those are going to be, that's going to be the time when things are, believe it or not, going to get even nastier politically than they are now.
Wow. In an election year.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting.
But I think we can do more, and I think that I would hope to see more of those types of partnerships formed so that we can leverage that entrepreneurial capability in a much bigger way. We can also use state, local, and federal funding in order to get some of those things accomplished and really help our local businesses. That's got to be the biggest thing on people's minds.
Right. And that's where I'm confident, and I'm confident in the creativity of small and medium business owners to really make an impact in whatever economy.
That's exactly right.
Well, thanks for being here, John.
My pleasure.
I'm here with John Stewart, the managing partner for Vantage Economics, and would you like to take a second and just share a little bit about Vantage Economics?
Sure. Well, Vantage Economics, I'm an economic consultant, which pretty much means I can be your data guru. I do a lot of forecasting, look at sales analysis, kind of connect what's happening with your business to the overall economy.
Okay.
If you're a transportation company, we can look at oil prices. If you're a manufacturing firm, we can look at other commodity prices. We can look at geographic differences, where you might target your marketing dollars. There's a broad spectrum of things that I can help with in terms of leveraging different strategies. Folks can reach me on the web at www.vantageeconomics.com. There's a blog there that folks can take a look at and get a little review of some of the economic activity and how it relates to their business. And they can always feel free to contact me through the website.
Great. Well, thanks, John.
Sure.
And I like having John on here because what he really does is he helps people make better decisions. Thank you today for joining us, and I thank John for being our guest, and we'll see you next week.